Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt
With me today is financial advisor Jodie Lynn Craven.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
And we're doing a special edition, one of these special segments that we've been doing on cryptocurrency that we're calling the Crypto Skeptic, although I've added an S on it today, Jodie, because you've done enough of them with me. So I think it's now the Crypto Skeptics, right?
Yeah.
You're officially part of this this little special segment we do. So thank you for being a part of it. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm always excited to learn more and get new perspectives.
New perspectives, man, that's the topic of the day. I just finished the regular podcast, and that was what the topic was for the whole podcast. New perspectives. What are all the cool new perspectives we have in life? And we'll continue to develop more of them right here with friend Matt Gardan. He was giving me pronunciation lessons. I'm not sure if I got it right.
Perfect. That's perfect.
Was that good? Okay.
Yep.
Matt, for those entire community know Matt because he's one of the original I think you kind of like founded the whole thing with David, didn't you? Pretty much.
No. I mean, I would have loved to, but I was involved very early on, and
you were an early adopter then.
Yeah.
Okay. Because you get credit for that. It's like everybody knows. Anybody who's in Taya knows who Matt is because you've been there for so long.
Yeah. I mean, we did. I have a small digital agency, and we kind of pick and choose curious brands that we want to work for, and so we did the branding and the website and stuff. So we helped out in that way.
Okay. Very cool. I like that.
Yeah.
So did you also help with the move to Patreon? That was the latest thing they did.
No. We kind of build websites and do branding and stuff like that. So that's kind of where we help.
Got it.
But
okay.
Yeah.
But that's been and let's see, how many years have you been involved in that?
Man, like 4 at least.
4 years, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been quite a journey then.
It has. Yeah.
The earlier episode that I did today was with Sam Page, who's also a Thai boot camp graduate. We were talking quite a bit about boot camp.
Yeah. It's a fantastic framework for living your life. As you know.
Oh yeah.
As you know.
Yeah.
So,
well, in fact, we should have you back sometime to talk about the boot camp because that's a
love to.
conversation too.
Yeah.
But today is all about the cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and you actually gave us a good formula to start. So we're going to just start with what you started about talking about before we got the show started. You made a very good point, which is that it is the ultimate form of energy. We often think about money these days, particularly in these circles, of money being energy, and cryptocurrency, it's electrical energy. There's nothing else to it, which is a great point that you were making. I like that.
Yeah. It was a realization I had during a meditation actually, and it was just like, this is the next, it's just the next incarnation of money, and it moves in a way that is very much how energy moves, and I think collectively, the world is kind of evolving towards a more sophisticated understanding of how things really are, and we do live in an energetic realm, and something that's physical is just matter slowed down, moving very, very, very slowly. This is, I'm just going to change. Yeah, this is energy in the slow lane.
In the slow lane.
But it's still, it's actually at its core, it's electronic charges of atoms held together that vibrate slowly.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things I find exciting about the concept of cryptocurrencies in general. And I think we should probably have a little bit of an agreement on what they are.
That's a topic all by itself. We could spend a whole show on that one.
Yeah. And look, 99.9% of it is. Am I allowed to swear?
Oh, people have said all kinds of things in the show. I tend to keep it clean, but that doesn't mean guests do. So do what you want.
99% of it is bullshit. Okay, and it's not going to be there, and you are going to get ripped off. And I've been scammed, and I've got some investments at the moment that it looks like I will lose. And that's part and parcel of the game. Just like Jodie Lynn, just like in traditional finance, there are hundreds of scams and people get ripped off all the time, and that's why regulation is so tight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone wants an easy buck.
Yep.
Sure.
They want that 100,000% return.
Yeah. Or in Tara's case, 20% return. Just doesn't. How do you it's hard to manufacture that out of thin air.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so there's all that stuff, right? But the technology is groundbreaking, and the application of it has some really fundamentally life-saving uses. If you just talk about the top 10, or the ones that are really kind of invested in doing something in real life, they are providing a utility and a value that didn't exist 15 years ago. And I don't know how technical we want to get, but the way Bitcoin calculates So for me, the biggest groundbreaking thing about using blockchain as a means of payment, right? The blockchain is basically just a transparent database. Okay,
right.
That's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's a transparent database that everyone can see every transaction, and no one can change a transaction once it's on there. So you can't have fraud, right? All of a sudden, we now have a technology that you can't be fraudulent with, that you can use to exchange value. And we've never had that in the history of mankind.
Mm-hmm.
So just for that, you should be curious about it.
Okay.
Just for that, you should be like, whoa, wait, hang on. I can't rip someone off with this. And everyone can see everything that's going on, but it's okay. Like, now you start to have value exchange based on, transparency, and based on, I want to help you, you want to help me, we both agree on something, here's the transaction, done. And so there are two things that happen. One, the existing banking system that makes an awful lot of money on facilitating us sending, Jodie, Lynn, I want to send you $5. If I send you $5 from Australia to the US, it's going to cost me 20.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. That my bank will charge me 20. Your remittance bank will charge you something, and it'll take 4 or 5 days.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And the exchange in currency, and depending on what hour you did it on, how they're exchanging it today.
Yeah. Exactly. Or you can send me a string of digits that I can put into my mobile phone, and if you stay with blockchain as the example, in 10 minutes and for a fraction of a cent, I can send you that $5.
Wow.
Just for that, it has some value. Sorry?
There is some interest in that. I'm also interested in a couple of things that you said that I want to visit for a moment here. Earlier, you made the point that money is energy, and that crypto, for that reason, is perhaps one of the most pure forms of money that we've experienced so far. And then you went into talking about people who want to make money out of thin air. And I thought to myself, well, wait a minute. That's what we did. That's what crypto is. It's money made out of thin air.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but that whole concept of money is thin air anyway.
Mm-hmm.
The
current system that we're on right now it was created out of thin air.
It was.
Yeah. And what a lot of crypto people will say is, well, hang on. And when you need more, I can't remember who the head of the who the top dog financially in the States is at the moment. He just presses a button, and all of a sudden there's $1 trillion. Like if that's not making money out of thin air, I don't know what is.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like that. What's that saying? That 25% of all the US dollars in the history of the US dollars were created in the last 3 years, 2 years.
Yeah, that's probably about right. Yeah.
That's insane.
And that's been true for years, by the way. Every year it's been the same thing. Not just with the Federal Reserve, all the central banks. The increase in money supply it always accelerates over time. That's just the way fiat money works.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny that people think, hang on, that's real, but something that's on a transparent database that everyone can see, that is actually lodged and recorded and has rules around it, isn't real.
Right. No, I think it's a fair point.
You know,
Mhm.
and so I think, as far and the reason I like it, the observation that it's kind of more energetic is that it has this freedom to flow without control in a way. You know, it's my decision as the sender, it's your decision as the receiver. There's a certain structure in place. There are some rules around the framework, but then everything just moves within it. You
Yeah.
know.
There is another point that you brought up that I want to address as well. You brought up the idea that particularly with Bitcoin, other cryptocurrencies too, but I think we're largely talking about Bitcoin here, that you can't defraud somebody on Bitcoin. And there's a disclaimer that I think has to be put in there, because the disclaimer is fraud can happen using Bitcoin.
Yes.
It's within the blockchain itself that the fraud can't happen.
Yeah.
But fraud can still happen. You can be defrauded out of Bitcoin. That there are lots of ways that has happened so far.
Oh, 100%. And in fact, it's easier because you don't have that structure of the banking system around it, protecting people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know. And you know, so again, there's kind of pros and cons, right? It's the next evolution of money, but you have to be really responsible using it. And it's very unforgiving. If I try and send you, Walt, some coins, and I type the phrase in incorrectly, then it goes to somebody else, and the only way we can get it back is if that person sends it back to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sorry, mate. You initiated the transaction. The computer read the transaction. The network approved the transaction. The transaction is complete. Oh, but I made a mistake. Yes, you did.
Which points to something that has to actually evolve over time. There has to evolve ways to make sure that we aren't burned by our own human tendencies, because humans make mistakes. I mean, that's just part of being a human
nice way of saying stupidity.
I wasn't actually thinking stupidity. I was thinking just we make mistakes, and sometimes mistakes are actually fortuitous. I mean, that's actually been a topic here. But literally, we do things, and we think that we just did one thing, and we actually did something else.
Yeah. And look, I'm the first. I've made loads of mistakes sending transactions, and I've lost a lot of money sending transactions. It's the same thing. You're rushed. You're not focused. You get complacent with the current banking system that provides almost immediate return of funds, and it can, because it's really ultimately the banking system is just pixels on a screen.
Mm-hmm.
But the point being, there has to be some evolution there. I think that's actually a critical thing for Bitcoin in particular to become widely accepted. That kind of development has to happen, because I don't think people are going to have a tolerance for something that, oh, I just blew it. Oh, too bad, you just lost $1 million. You know, they're just not going to have tolerance for that.
No. And I think, well, yeah, no, they're not. And I think eventually it will. I think eventually where it will happen is, like today, you know, we're talking in 3 different parts. I mean, Jodie, are you in New York as well, or?
No, I'm in Canada.
Yeah, see, so like we're in 3 different countries,
right?
Instantly talking to each other, and we're not the slightest bit concerned about how the TCP/IP packets are sending bits of data across the thing.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that's what will happen with cryptocurrencies in whatever form. They will become the form of settlement on the internet. And you know, for example, you know, in 10 years' time, we're having this show, and it's a donation-based show, and we've worked out a fee for splitting our appearances on this show, and that fee's been put into a smart contract, and everyone's agreed it. And at the end of the show, all the donations collected will automatically be distributed. That's where it's heading, you know, and that's it. And if we make a mistake on the percentages of that distribution, then they will be distributed that way, you know. But it's going to be that, and then ultimately it kind of lends itself to, well, if a computer can control value and money and stuff, isn't that the best way to have a universal basic income? You know,
tie those concepts together, because I think that for many people, and I think this is probably true for me up until a few years ago, money and income are not the same thing.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, Can we come back to that? Because there's one point I want to make
Sure.
about Bitcoin beforehand that I think is quite important. All of us have the exorbitant privilege of being able to invest Bitcoin purely speculatively and hope we make money on it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I think that's a privilege that we kind of take extremely for granted. But for a lot of people, Bitcoin is a lifeline. You know, if you're one of the, and there's a number of quite famous examples. Most recently, there was a kid leaving the Ukraine. Suddenly, all the banks, you know, like Saturday morning, you're at a nightclub, your life is fine. Yeah, there's some shit on the news about, you know, Putin's going to invade. Monday morning, they're dropping bombs, and you can only take $25 out of the ATM.
Mm-hmm.
You know, bang, that's it.
Right.
So it's irrelevant how much you have in your bank account. You can only take out $25. You know, and there was a kid who had managed to get some Bitcoin, managed to make an agreement with somebody in Poland. Said, "Listen, I've got Bitcoin. I got it on my hard disk, on my USB key. If I get to you in Poland, will you give me some, you know, whatever the currency is over there? Yes, I trust you. Okay." He's walked away with, you know, life savings that no one else could. You know,
Right.
It's an interesting point.
Yeah. There's the farmer in Zimbabwe whose inflation is, you know, $9,000 a year. His farm is worthless because no one's going to buy it. Who's been able to put something in Bitcoin because it holds its value, and he has something. Argentina, same thing. Runaway inflation. They don't want their local currency. They want something that holds its value against other things. There was a women's group in Kenya who were trying to talk about women's rights and women be able to grow a business in you know, growing a circle, business circles, women, and they upset someone in the government. So all their banking was frozen. You know, so yeah, Jodie Lynn actually, you know, the Canadian truckers is an example of that.
Yeah.
You know? And this is where that technology suddenly becomes life-saving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think that I don't think that cryptocurrency is ever going to go away. I don't think that's even on the drawing board. The question that I've always raised in my mind from the moment that I first heard about Bitcoin, which was right after it was created in 2008, was can it ever become a viable major currency, globally accepted? And that's what I still have doubts about. But I agree. There are so many use cases where cryptocurrency and plus crypto technology in non-currency situations is going to play really interesting roles that we can't even fathom yet because it's still in the development phase. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of cool stuff, including, you know, being able to deal with extreme situations like the ones that you dealt with. Definitely, there's value to be had there.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing some work with a client at the moment who have a fantastic program that incentivizes people in Africa to take their AIDS medication. You know, and because they're using the blockchain to document and ledger that, and they reward people through a token that's based on the blockchain. One of the biggest reasons why people in Kenya don't take their AIDS medication is because they can't take the time off work. They can't afford to take the time off work to go to the doctor to get the medication.
Yeah.
And so what this system does is download the app, sign up with your doctor. We'll pay you to go to the doctor and take your medication. Document that you take your medication. We collect the data and we on-sell the data to government bodies. So everyone wins. I win because I get paid to take my medication. The doctor wins because his patient survives. The government wins because they have data to see on how stuff's working. And the company wins because it's making a clip from the people who can afford to pay for it.
This reminds me of something. Back around 30 years ago, the internet, of course, was just barely beginning to get started, hadn't really caught on in any big way. And particularly in Africa, other developing countries as well, but many countries in Africa, one of the major problems that they had was a lack of timepieces because people didn't have watches. They didn't have clocks. So things like AIDS medications, you mentioned AIDS, you know, there's timing mechanisms. There's a regimen that you have to follow. You have to take this, and then after this period of time, you have to take that. They couldn't do it. So even if they were given the medications, they couldn't get the value out of the medications because they had no way to take a measure of time. And now we live in an era where virtually the entire planet has smartphones that has clocks built into it.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
thinking, whoa, what a transition that's been.
Yeah. And funnily enough, Africans are far more advanced with electronic payment systems than we are.
Sure, but well, they have a lot of incentive for it.
Yeah. But
There are a lot of countries that are just their central banking systems are in some cases not bad, in other cases they're abhorrent. So of course they're looking for alternatives.
But they've kind of communication technology has arrived, and they've kind of leapfrogged us in other ways. So
Yeah. So
That's like mind blowing to think about the possibilities when it comes to getting paid for things that have been previously unimaginable. Like I never thought about that AIDS medication. And in my mind, as you're going through the story, I'm thinking like, why do they want to pay them for this? Like what is the driver to this? Oh, it makes sense. They're getting data. And I think, that is really applicable to, the developing nations as well. As we get Facebook and Instagram and all of these things, there's all of this data mining that is happening. And at what point, I know this is kind of off topic, but at what point are people starting to turn and say, no, that's mine. And if you want it, you're going to have to pay for it. And it's going to be a similar system as what you were talking about with Africa.
Yeah. And data you can trust, right? And I know it's mine because that's my number assigned to me, and everyone can see that that's me. So you can't do this Cambridge Analytica stuff again where you're buying. It's a bad analogy, but you can't take somebody else's identity because the identity is assigned to you, and every transaction is recorded and can't be changed.
That raises an interesting question, and I don't know the answer to it. I'm thinking maybe you might. One of the reasons that many people are liking the idea of blockchain is just what you described. It can be a permanent, unchangeable medical record, but by the same token, people want to have privacy where medical records are concerned, and I don't know how that's being addressed. Do you know how that's being addressed?
Well, yes, because what they do is they anonymize the data. So your wallet address is a string of numbers, and it's broken into I'm not exactly sure how the cryptography works, but it's broken into two sets. There's the public key and the private key. And so if you want to pay me something, I share my public key and you send it to my public key. If I want to use it, I have to have the private key. Right, but so to me that doesn't actually address the issue from the way I see. I mean, I understand the idea of a public key and private key. Like you have an IT background, so I get that part. But to me, the big issue there isn't whether or not it's encrypted. The issue is who has access to the private key. Because if you're going to be working with anybody who's in healthcare, they're going to have access. They got to be able to see the data. That's the point. Yeah, you can see all the data, but you can't change or move anything with it unless you've got the private key to make a transaction. But the point is, people want their private data to be private.
But can you
see? So here's what I'm thinking of. Let's say you work with a health provider who's kind of an off the grid health provider. Somebody who's they're not an official doctor or something like that, and they get access to your data, and now all of a sudden they've got the data, so they're going to start spreading it around. They're going to resell it. They're going to do crazy things with it. That to me is the nightmare that many people have where computerized medical data is concerned. It isn't so much, is it in a blockchain? It's that people can trade it around and they don't have any control over it.
Yes, but the concern there is you can trade around that it's my data, right? I go to see you and you know that I have Hep B, right? And I don't want my employer to know that I have Hep B. So if you have data that says, man, mid-40s has Hep B, that's kind of useless. If you have data that says Matt Gardan has Hep B, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
And so what the blockchain has is it separates me from the data.
Yeah, but I don't buy that argument. I don't buy that argument at all, because it's gotten to the point now, and this has been true for like the last 15 years or so. You just need to have one little piece of information about somebody, and you can use that to get all kinds of other information about them. So just having one little piece is all you need. It's not like it's a difficult thing these days for data miners to start piecing the puzzle together from a variety of different sources.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
And that's why phishing is so dangerous, right? Because
Absolutely.
They're collecting that data that they need to identify you.
Yeah.
My question would be, how does it work currently? And I know we're all from different countries, but I'm not in the healthcare profession, but I have had, relatives or whatever. When I was going through things, one of my cousins said, I can look that up for you. Now, if we ever talk about it, then I could get in trouble and lose my job. But she had access to blood tests or different things, or the potential for access, even going to see a surgeon. I asked about a different, an ultrasound that I had, and he was like, "Oh, great question. Hold on a second." And then grabbed like a key fob thing, plugged it into his computer, and pulled up my entire record. So is it that that's not happening right now, that they all have access, or is it just the medical professionals that have access? Like, how is our access or our data being accessed right now in the current system?
In theory or in practice?
Well, both.
Because they're not necessarily the same thing.
Yeah, imaginable. Yeah.
And which system, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, look, I think they raised 2 points. A lot of people who are designing these systems design them in a certain way that the data, again, mid-30s woman in Canada has ultrasound. That's useless. 15,000 women in their 30s in Canada have had ultrasounds in the last week. That's useful.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they try and do is it's called, what is it? De-anonymize it.
Decompartmentalizing?
Yeah. And they kind of, it only needs to connect to you at one point, right? It only needs to connect to your name at one point, and then that data gets separated and put into the pool with everyone else.
So then I become nameless.
Yeah.
You don't know that it's me that had the ultrasound or whatever. It's just 30-year-old woman or whatever had ultrasound, and then they pull that data and trying to extrapolate whatever they're trying to figure out.
Exactly. They're looking for trends, and then the bigger the data set, the more accurate the trend.
Mm-hmm.
But personalized information in that trend actually is extraneous data, right? Because they don't care that you had one. What they care is all of a sudden 1,000 people in their 30s are having them. Okay, what's going on? That's odd.
Yeah.
So that's one point. But the second point is the weakest link in all of this always is humans.
Yes.
Always. If you look at big data breaches, are typically secretaries who have a password of love 1234.
Yeah. It's crazy stuff like that. Yeah.
The virus just needs one way to get in. Once it's inside, it's game on.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Like and like COVID, you just need to sneeze on somebody, and the other person breathes it in, and it's in, and away you go.
I think what's ultimately happening is something that very few people are willing to accept yet, and I'm one of them, and that is accepting the idea that privacy really is gone.
Oh, it was
but isn't it already gone?
It's been gone for a while. Yeah.
I mean, you'd know this, Jodie. That I remember saying this stat. I heard about this stat like in the last century. Credit card companies, and I think it was in like 98 or 99, with 80%. No, it was in 99, and with 98% accuracy, 2 years out, could predict a divorce.
Yeah, sure.
Wow. Yeah.
Chocolates, hotel rooms, flowers, lingerie.
Well, you're going to make it easy.
Yep.
Yeah.
But isn't that exactly what they're doing? Like what Meta is doing right now when it comes to like the algorithm for Facebook and Instagram? Not necessarily predicting divorce, but they're capturing so much of your data. There was one story that I heard of this lady who requested all of her data back from Amazon, and they sent her audio files from her light bulb.
Yeah.
Like
light bulb.
From her smart light bulb. And I used to think those things were really cool, like the hey Alexa, turn on the lights. I thought all of those things were really cool. And then I started to hear stories about that. And it's not that I'm doing anything illegal or immoral that I don't want anybody to see. It's that there is a way higher chance or probability of being manipulated when someone has that much data on you, they can control how you feel or the way that you're seeing a situation, or potentially control. I mean, you still have your own sovereign belief systems and the ability to choose. But I think society has a problem with that right now, thinking constructively or whatever, like being conscious about what they're thinking and the actions, and tying all of that together is something that we're not really taught in this environment today a whole lot.
And is more important than ever, right?
Yes.
We've been dumbed down into sound bites, and like I'm forever having arguments with my kids. This happened. Where did you hear that? TikTok. Okay, TikTok is bullshit. Like, that's not the news. You can't say something's real because you saw it on TikTok. It's not. Yes, it is, Daddy. I saw it on TikTok. It's like, it makes me apocalyptic.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Either one.
somebody says I'm it doesn't look real.
Even the news.
Except for this show. This show is real.
Yes, this show's real.
I hope so. I try to make it real, but you never know.
Yeah.
Yeah, even the news. I mean, go back and look at news segments from the 70s and the 60s. It was tough questions presenting both sides of an argument and letting viewers draw their own conclusion.
Yes.
And yet, I'll point out, I'm going to play devil's advocate on this one. And yet, despite that fact, most people, after watching those news programs, had very little understanding of what was actually going on.
Yeah.
And the same today. I mean, you were mentioning the trucker convoy and help with Bitcoin and sort of things like that, accounts being frozen. Watching the news, it looked like these people were crazy and that they were destroying cities and burning the place down and all of these things. There's so much angst around it, and that's what was presented on the news. And I knew people who were down there in Ottawa, and that's not what it was like at all. It was a hot tub party. Like, they were cleaning the streets. Like, but it's this discernment. That's the word that I was looking for. Discernment that has been, I don't know if it's taken away from our society. It still lives there, but society isn't actively using their own discernment to feel into, is this true? Is this not true? They just take it from TikTok or take it from the news segment or take it from Joe next door. This person said it. It must be gospel.
Yeah.
Well, I think also what this is really an overall societal trend toward learning perspective, because really what we're talking about is different perspectives being presented as truth.
And
that's been a piece of knowledge that we've had for generations now, that truth is in the eye of the beholder.
What's exciting about blockchain, though, sorry to interrupt you, Matt. What's exciting about blockchain, though, is the possibility of that transparency. You start thinking about some of the things that happened even over the last couple of years, and the information that came out with the trials or anything. Having a system that couldn't be corrupted, couldn't be manipulated. And maybe that's just me being naive and thinking that it can't be manipulated. Maybe it can. I don't know. But if I could have it all my way, having a system that cannot be manipulated, and it's just the cold, hard facts. Think about how much stress or, I don't know, misinformation, how less of it we would have, because we have the actual data and we can make our own decision from there.
Yeah. And there was a case recently, in fact, it hit the news last week, where the Department of Justice is bringing charges towards employers who work in Coinbase for insider trading.
Wow.
And the reason that came out was there was a crypto Twitter guy who was going through the records and said, I noticed this anonymous account bought a bunch of tokens just before they listed. Isn't that odd? And that's how it started. And they picked it up and they traced the account back to the person. And the person was actually a friend of so-and-so who was in there, and they were buying it 2 days before listing. And hey, there's your proof. And we don't even need to argue about whether it's proof, because it can't be changed.
And how interesting, the anonymous account wasn't so anonymous.
And it's not anonymous, it's pseudonymous. Right?
What is pseudonymous?
Yeah, so it's as in you're using a pseudonym instead of being yourself. So it's kind of, and even our bank accounts at the moment, if you want to pay me, you need to give me a country code and a bank code and a thing, and then at the end the name.
Yeah.
Right? This just separates that name section a little more. Like you can ultimately find who it is.
Yeah.
And that's why all that crypto, people being worried about paying ransom in Bitcoin is stupid, because that's the worst thing you want to be paid in, because it's traceable.
Yeah, everything's traceable.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what the point is.
Yeah.
It's all traceable.
Yeah. And, like 95% of global organized crime happens in US dollars. So if we're worried about a currency being used for crime, then we should be most worried about the USD.
Yeah, we could go off the deep end into that rabbit hole really easy.
Yeah, but let's bring it back to cryptocurrencies and the technology. It is a new technology, and we're coming to understand it and use it at a time when there's the most amount of information. And so I think, warts and all, it's going through its growing pains, and you're seeing every train wreck and every success in real time as they kind of unfold.
So in answer to the question, why hasn't Bitcoin actually become the major currency yet that it was supposed to be? It's been not quite. It's been 12, 14 years now. Why hasn't it gained the traction that everybody thought it was going to gain?
I think there's two reasons for that. One, the powers that be don't want it to.
But theoretically, they weren't supposed to be able to stop it. That was part of the theory.
No, and to a certain extent, they haven't been able to, but they've certainly made adoption very, very, very difficult. I think it was Panama was about to be the second country in Latin America to adopt Bitcoin as a legal tender, and the IMF was like, no. Like the second you do that, we're pulling all our funding and you're screwed. Argentina, same thing. The IMF swoops in and goes, listen, we're only giving you this $45 billion bailout, which isn't going to help if you remove this piece of legislation from the legislation that you're about to pass. So, you've got this big global bully beating up the nerd, basically. And every time the group of nerds get together and say, this would be a much better way to let's all pool our lunch money, and then no one can steal it because everyone can see where it's going. And the guy comes in and goes, start again. So I think that's the main thing. Also, it's kind of the narrative around it has evolved to have different purposes. And I think it's kind of more seen as a store of value now than a transaction.
Well, that was the assumption. I'm not so sure it's actually seen as a store of value. The reason I say that is it's transactional pricing compared to other currencies has been wildly all over the place.
Yeah. And look, but I think we'll come to that. And part of the reason it's tanked at the moment is generally everything's tanked. And B, you had lots of big hedge funders who were enjoying they were bringing all their technology from a regulated market to an unregulated market and just going to town. And so now, as it swings up, it also swings down, and they can see it swinging down, and they get out. They're just taking profits, basically.
Well, I would say right now Bitcoin is priced, and has been for the last couple of years, as if it were already a global currency, as if we're already a major currency, and it's not. And that's setting up all kinds of opportunities. It's easy to blame a hedge fund because they're big and they got lots of money behind them and a lot of power behind them. But I have to say, well, wait a minute. If it weren't for the fact that Bitcoin has not caught on, they would have a hard time doing what they're doing right now. Exactly. The only reason they're able to pull it off is because it's not a major global currency. Which is exactly what's supposed to happen in a marketplace. If the marketplace, if the intention in the marketplace was for Bitcoin to become a major currency and people bought into it as if it were, and then it's not actually a major global currency, well, it's going to get punished. That's the way a marketplace works. It's supposed to work that way.
And look, I think there's two reasons on that. One is the adoption curve is still very much in its infancy, and there is a technological hurdle to usage. Right? You need to today. I need to download an app. I need to cut and paste your code in. I need to have a reasonably high degree of, technical proficiency to send money.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the banking system has removed most of that for us, where my mom until a couple of years ago could pay for something with her credit card, right? Just kind of tap, and there you go. So I think blockchain technology will grow to, and the banking industry's had hundreds of thousands, it's had definitely hundreds of years to develop to that level, right? So 10 years into using little gold blocks instead of fruit didn't have global adoption, right? And then it went, what was it? Fruit to seashells to gold to notes. No one wanted notes at the beginning. So what's that paper? I'm going to keep my gold. Yeah, but gold is heavy and it's hard to transact and you can't move it around and it's hard to put in a ledger. This money thing, you just put in your pocket and walk away. We went from that to digital to now trustless, and we're still in that transition phase of this is the next evolution of value exchange, and we need, it's going to change the world for 1,000 years, and you want it to be done in 10.
Yeah, I think you're making the point for me. You're validating the point that I was making, which is it's not a storehouse of value. A storehouse of value actually retains its value. It's actually trustworthy in a way. Everybody accepts it as being that. Everybody kind of adopts it. We're not anywhere near that with Bitcoin yet. So I actually disagree with the idea that Bitcoin's a storehouse of value. It is theoretical.
I could be devil's advocate on this one.
Okay.
What is truly a storehouse of value? People will lean towards gold and silver, but we know that those markets have been suppressed. And there's documentaries about, gangsters. I'll call them gangsters, drug runner, I don't know, the mafia, whatever, taking, cash, millions and millions of dollars USD to these poor countries that have mines, exchanging for gold, and then bringing it and flooding it into the US market, which is obviously going to have an impact on price. So what, in relation to like what is a true storehouse of value, do we have one?
I don't think we do. No,
and which comes back to the point of narrative is so important in store of value, which comes back to this is the purest form of money as energy, and energy flows where attention goes, right? So once we land on a narrative that collectively everyone agrees in, value will go up. Did the technology change? No, our belief of it changed. Our shared belief, our shared narrative changed, and we all agreed. Actually, seashells are really cool. That's where it's at. but like ultimately, seashells or gold bars or bananas or cryptocurrency, it's the same thing, right? We've just agreed. We just have this belief, a shared common belief that it has value.
And that's really the root of the whole thing, belief. Do we believe that it's money? That's what makes it money. And that to me is the crux of why I doubt that cryptocurrency is going to become what people say, what its advocates say it's going to be, because there are so many factors going on right now in this transition period that supposedly is leading us to a point where it gains global acceptance and global adoption, that I think it's actually going to stop it from gaining that global adoption that they're advocating. And the reason I say that is we have this is something we know in our circles, because we're in like energetic, spiritual, law of attraction kind of circles, right? And we understand the nature of energy. We understand the nature of spiritual energy and how it works, at least to some degree, more than most people do. One of the things that we understand is that the energy, the belief that you have in it actually governs the way it's going to play out. If you have a level of belief that's strong, it's going to play out in favor of whatever that thing is that you're believing in. If your level of belief is weak, you're likely to get something not in the same ballpark as what you're looking for. So when I look at the globe right now, when I look at the world right now and how the world interacts with and understands and accepts or doesn't accept, or in some way believes or doesn't believe in cryptocurrency, I see one factor after another that says, no, not buying into it. No, not getting it. Not interested. Not no. And there is a social collective energy that we in our circles know about. There's like this shared energetic energy of knowledge that kind of it's how a lot of knowledge actually circulates among humankind and the rest of existence as well. That is building up a huge library, if you will, of all the reasons to think that cryptocurrency is not a currency and can't be trusted as a currency and is not a storehouse of currency. So the question I have to keep asking over and over and over again is, why should we expect that's going to change?
It's a very good question. I think there's two reasons. First of all, logically, it's very, very, like, we're 10 years in. Can you give us another 20 years, please, Walt?
I can give you a 50, 100. I don't think it's going to make a difference.
But the second thing is, let's use a comparison that we're all familiar with. Let's compare LOA to Newtonian physics, right? Okay. Like, scientists say that's all bullshit. All your hockamamie hippie, light another candle, grab another crystal, off you go. Mm-hmm. It's kind of the same comparison, right? I'm over here in the real world where I can touch and feel things and where, Newton's 3 laws govern my existence. And you're over there in the hippie land thinking you can just dream up stuff and it'll happen. It's the money version of law of attraction.
I agree. Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think LOA isn't going to go anywhere?
I don't think it's the right question. I think the question that you're really trying to ask is, do I think that LOA is going to gain global acceptance?
Yeah, good point.
And the answer is no, I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think that's like the end of LOA. I just think that no, for the same reason that Christianity has not gained global acceptance and Islam has not gained global acceptance and financial planning has not gained global acceptance. There's no such thing. There is nothing that I know of that has pure global acceptance other than we're all here.
Well, fear and greed and love.
I'm not even sure you can say that. There are going to be some people who will disagree with each one of those points.
True.
We live in a world where there are so many different perspectives. This is why I keep coming back to perspective. There are so many different perspectives, so many different ways of understanding things. I think we're long past any possible realm where there can be global agreement on anything.
Then does it need to be?
That's a much more interesting question. Yeah.
The other thing I would say on cryptocurrency is I think where it's going to have a huge advantage is the internet is slowly eating the world, right? This is
yes.
a form of technology that is kind of almost globally adopted.
Right.
And cryptocurrency has the potential to ultimately be the most efficient way to transfer value on the top of those internet rails.
Possibly.
And so that's where I think it will leapfrog traditional currency.
And we will only know when we get there.
Yeah. I keep coming back to the thing that I struggle with cryptocurrency is I think that getting the IMF, World Bank, Bank of International Settlements, all of those players on board and the government on board too, because I think using a crypto like Bitcoin, where it has there's only so many of them, so that's what creates the store of value or the appearance or whatever you want to call it, a store of value. We'd have to rein in all of the politicians around the world. Like, you actually have to budget now. Good luck. I don't know that they're going to want to do that. And then when it comes to like the IMS and the Bank of International Settlements and all of the federal reserves around the world, they're relinquishing a lot of control. And I could see them piggybacking off of crypto and like the excitement of crypto and using that to launch the digital dollar. And maybe when people, because I think that it's very dangerous. This is my personal opinion, whether it's right, wrong, or whatever. And I'm not stuck on it, so I can be swayed. But I'm nervous about the digital dollar happening and how much control the government would actually have in that way. So maybe that happens and it blows up, and then people are like, "Hey, let's do something that actually works," and then they shift to crypto. I could see that eventually happening, maybe on that side, but I could see it working in a private, like person to person. Like, Matt, if you had something that you wanted from me or whatever, and you wanted to give me dollars, we could exchange it, and no one can tell us we can't. It works on that person to person, or that private person to private person level. So I think a lot of our social circumstances would have to change, the way that we purchase things, where we purchase them from, maybe, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe we come back to localization or communities and people coming together to help one another, like your neighbor or whatever. And it's not, Joe Buccalardi's grocery store, aka Walmart, or McDonald's that you're now getting your food from. It's now the next door neighbor who's growing peas, and there's that exchange there. I could see potential for that. But I think that a lot of things have to change, and I don't trust that the governments will relinquish their control and say, sure, have at it.
Yeah, the phrase you kept coming to my mind was the Jungian phrase, what you resist persists. And there's a whole lot of resistance going on here in a whole lot of different directions.
There is.
I mean, we live in fascinating times. This is a real historical, seismic historical moment,
Agreed.
I mean, the other thing is, at the moment we live in a relatively free world with a waning superpower that espoused individual freedom, right? The guys coming after the US are much less concerned about individual freedoms than the US was, and the Chinese have already won, right? It's not a question of whether or not they will, it's a question of when they will be the dominant superpower. Like they did it 20 years ago when no one was paying attention, and so do you want access to a independent means of exchange when you live on a planet that is much more coercive and controlled than it is today?
It's a great point, because ultimately I think what happens is, in any of these scenarios that we're painting here, and that's what we're really doing, we're painting scenarios, is we're also asking ourselves, how does the population respond? Or how do segments of the population respond? And there's going to be a wide range of responses, but some of them are going to be inclusive of some form of cryptocurrency. That's going to happen. Yeah.
And I think you and I'm a nerd, right? Like, I'm excited about the tech. That's what I like about it. It's like, so cool. You can do it now. You couldn't do it before. This is like the future. The kids are like, oh God, not Bitcoin again. Used to be all energy. Now it's all Bitcoin. It's like, don't you see? I'm like that meme, with the guy like.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
I love that.
I love it. Yeah. So
good. And I think, I think you're right. There is that kind of, again, we're so privileged to have won the, skin color lottery, to have won the geography lottery, to have won the time in history lottery, and to just be experiencing this time where we've got the luxury to spend an hour on a call with each other, discussing philosophy, really.
Yeah.
And I think you need, Jodie, and to your point, you need that balance. Governments aren't bad. You do need them for stuff. Like, somebody's got to build the roads, somebody's got to run the buses. All that stuff is useful. I've got European heritage, very strong socialist tradition in my country, and it's kind of, there's huge benefits to that. There are huge benefits to that. I think where it starts to get really interesting is, imagine a world where money isn't controlled by men, and obviously there are some women, but by and large it's, stale, pale and frail white men who control the financial systems.
Yes.
And who do it badly. Really. I mean, if it's, there's enough wealth for everyone to be prosperous, why isn't everyone prosperous?
Well, actually, I want to address that, because I've had this thought going on in my head now for a few minutes while we've been talking here. And I'm going to put out to you something that I've already mentioned to Jodie Lynn previously, and I've mentioned to one other guest on the program here too. I honestly believe, crypto or non, take crypto out of the conversation in terms of it. Let's go crypto. Let's just think broadly about currency and money. I really am more and more every day feeling very strong that we're going to be thinking about money differently just 10 years from now.
Yes.
Just very, very differently and with very different levels of emphasis. I honestly believe, and I don't know exactly how this is going to happen, but I honestly believe that 10 years from now, money is going to be a lot less of a topic. It's going to be a lot less important. And I can't explain why I think that. I have little bits and pieces that are forming into a theory, but it's not coherent yet.
Well, I think people are starting to realize that it's not a green piece of paper anymore.
That's part of it. Yeah.
You know, they're starting to see, and the internet has created a global marketplace where, you know, we can exchange ideas and value, and then go and get, you know, have something on our phones. I think the first thing is, in 10 years' time, there'll be much less paper money.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Well, there already is much less. Yeah.
It'll all be on here, and so all of a sudden, it's been abstracted even further, and it just kind of happens in the background.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's why I think like a universal basic income or a universal wage would be fantastic. And I was having a discussion with somebody about this recently, and it's like, I don't think it should cover all your needs. I think it should cover your basic, right? It should you shouldn't have to worry about rent anymore. You shouldn't have to worry about nutritious food, and you shouldn't have to worry about transport. Those three things are now covered by the universal basic wage. And if all you want to do is sit at home on the floor and have, you know, enough nutritious food to be healthy and to get around, you can do that.
I'll take that a step further. I'm not really concerned about whether or not you're limited to, well, your rent, your food, your clothing are going to be covered. I don't think that kind of limit is important. And the reason I don't think it's important is that it's basically tying into the old scarcity/fear argument. You know, you have to have scarcity built in, otherwise you won't have an economy. Well, I think we now know that that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, but sorry. All I'm saying is, I think the value of a universal basic income to lift people out of poverty. There are people who work 3 jobs a day just to have a roof over their heads.
Well, whether or not it's done through a piece of legislation, I even have doubts about that.
Yeah.
I do think we are going to, in some manner, get to a point where people do have enough, and it's across the board. I'm not going to speculate on exactly how I think that's going to happen, because I'm still working that one out. But I do think we get to that point, and I think
let the IMF know when you figure it out.
Well, no, actually, they'll be the last ones I'll call. But that's but what I'm thinking about as I think about that is, I think that assume that we somehow get there, whatever the mechanism is. Okay, once we get there, I think that the whole thought process about labor changes dramatically, and the whole thought process about value changes dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
Changes in ways that it's almost impossible for us to conceive at this point, although we can kind of dimly speculate about it. But for instance, right now, like we're doing this podcast right now, I make like a little tiny bit of money on certain things that I do with it, but this is not a moneymaker for me. You guys aren't making anything directly off of it, but we're providing value here. This value actually starts to become a different kind of value. Maybe that's not really the right way of saying it. It's thought of differently, and it's valued differently. And it's just one little example of a whole range of things that are considered valuable today, but don't necessarily have a price tag attached to them, that going into this new future land that we're in, all of a sudden has a whole new level of value to it, and a whole an expendable value.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be cool if it was really easy to send some value for this?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm liking that. Ping, ping, ping.
Yeah.
What if likes were worth 3 cents? You know,
or whatever. It doesn't matter what the amount is.
Yeah.
I think you really hit the nail on the head. Is we're coming to the end of the industrial age.
Yes, exactly.
You know, and the industrial age was, again, aristocracy in London, get poor people in factories. If I can get 9 hours worth of labor out of them in 8, that's great.
Yeah.
You know, because I got 1 hour for free.
Mhm.
And is it Seth Godin who talked about the creative revolution?
Yes.
Now we're coming into the creative age where, your value is what can you uniquely put forth to the world.
And that's such a huge shift for our society,
Mm.
because when you ask the average person to just take a breath and feel into what is valuable in terms of work, most people's definition is like bloody hands, hard work, grinding it out, doing something physical typically, but there's doing. Whereas the creative, sure, with your mind, you might be, creating a lovely book or writing something down, or I don't know, new whatever it is, it doesn't matter, but it's a different almost muscle. And our society hasn't valued that creativity in that same way as bloody hands, working, grinding. So I think there's going to be that huge shift there. But there's a lot of ways that this could happen too. You start thinking about technology, just gas and electricity or something like that. Like Nikola Tesla had amazing technology for free energy. Now I haven't researched it, so don't shoot the messenger. I've just seen a couple different things, but how many years ago was that? Imagine what we could do if we started putting our brains towards being creative and creating a free energy solution. And maybe it's not something like basic income, but maybe it's something that like now your energy is no cost to you, because now we have this new creative solution, and your gas is no cost to you. And it's hard for people to actually imagine those things, but the future has a lot of possibilities in front of us.
Yeah. By the way, solar panels are based on Tesla's ideas. That's where they originated. Just so.
There you go. Yeah.
Which, sorry?
Tesla's ideas led directly to the solar panel.
Wow.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. There's a genius that should have won.
Well, he did. He's winning. He's winning today.
Yeah, true.
I mean, it's ongoing, right? The other thing that occurs to me too is I think numbers are going to be a lot less important. And by numbers, I mean how popular is something. Right now, social media in particular is all about popularity. Most people, if they're starting a business, they're worried about how popular can I be, because that's going to drive my business. I think that once we have this shift taking place, and I think it is taking place, all of a sudden popularity becomes unimportant. No, not completely unimportant, but a lot less important than it is right now. Let's put it that way.
Well, you just all of a sudden now tribalism is not limited by location.
Yes.
Suddenly, and the kind of niche that we revolve in is very delocalized. Most of my friends don't live in my neighborhood.
Right.
Me either.
And
well, this is the neighborhood.
Yeah, this is the new neighborhood. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is great. And then and we have this luxury of having a job that affords us the time to do this.
Yeah.
Which is pretty darn cool.
That's amazing.
And it's going to become even more so. That's the part that still boggles my mind. Wow, it becomes even more so and more so and more so and more so.
Yeah.
After a while, it becomes hard to follow the iterations.
It's true.
As you go way down the rabbit hole.
It really is. It's fabulous. Well, this has been a fun trip down the rabbit hole. Let's put it that way.
Thank you guys. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for listening to my incoherent ramblings.
Not incoherent, very coherent.
Very coherent.
And coherent coming back, and we had a lot of coherency going on.
Yeah,
so this is a coherency discussion going on.
Yeah.
I love it. No, seriously, Matt, thanks for coming onto the show and sharing with us.
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. I hope to be able to. I hope to be invited back.
Yeah, sure. Well, we still have to have
plug there for phase 2.
Well, we have to have that other conversation we were talking about, right? The Taya conversation.
Yeah, 100%.
Because we've had other people from the Taya community on. We got to have you on for that.
Yeah, 100%.
So
And I don't know what you guys talk about, at other times, but I think it's so important for your audience to have basic financial understanding. As much as we talk about the future and as much as we talk about everything that's going to change today, you need to be able to balance your checkbook, and a lot of people can't. And one of the biggest problems is this free access to debt. And people not realizing how ensnaring and enslaving bad debt can be. So, yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's right up Jodie's alley, because she's a coach on financials. I mean, I don't know. Do you ever talk about balancing checkbooks, Jodie? We never really talked about that part of it, but
in my brokerage business, yes, it's all about the budget and where we get the money from, and what they're doing and how can we rearrange some things, and then the products that they need to support that transition. On the coaching side, it's more the energetic side of how you feel when you're spending that money, what the money is going to, how you have created the perception in your mind that I don't have enough, and then how that is actually impacting the reality that you're creating and how to shift away from that.
That's an interesting balance too, because you're having to deal with both worlds, really.
Yes. It is an interesting day when I have brokerage business and coaching in the same day, because it's a different muscle completely. I use a lot of things towards one as I do the other. But it's definitely a different sense, like frame of mind. I'm kind of like all business and numbers, and like put the glasses on, get my calculator out, because I'm awful at math. So, but that's
you just want to hear that from your financial advisor.
Yeah,
I'm so awful at math.
I'm really good at a spreadsheet. That's all that matters.
But you must see some similarities between successful businesses have people who have a successful mindset.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can be, and then and abysmal businesses are people who have hectic mindsets, or this mindset of lack, right?
Yes.
If only I had another client, if only I could sell more this, if only. And the successful people are like, okay, how are we going to do this? You know?
Yeah, let's figure out how we get that extra client, or, you know, thinking about the possibilities of it. Yeah, even for individuals and families, you know, the mindset matters. I always tell this story, Matt, that, you know, in my brokerage business, what led me to coaching was I would free up $1,000 a month for families. And it wasn't once, it was multiple times. Build a plan, sign all the documents, dot the I's, cross the T's, everything for them to be in a wildly different position in a year or two from now, and then go back and they were in a worse position. And that intrigued me, because I could see it in myself, how I would do that on different levels. My credit card balance would go to the same amount, my bank account balance, you know, I would just repeat these patterns. And I knew that there was this energy behind money. And that's what led me into coaching, was learning all of that.
Wow. It's that thing. You can give a poor person $1 million. 2 years later, they'll be poor.
Yes.
You know.
So it raises the question, why are they poor? Which, by the way, is an entire show, so I don't ask
Yes!
you to answer that question.
We could go on all day.
Yeah, you got a couple more hours?
Okay.
How cool we could actually say that. Okay. Unfortunately, I can't, because I have dinner waiting. But
yeah, no. And I actually I've got a meeting in 15 minutes, so I've got to scramble.
Yeah.
So
He's got breakfast, you've got dinner.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, what we do know is we had a wonderful dinner of the soul and of the mind. So thank you once again for being a part of that. Thank you, Jodie Lynn, as usual. Your wonderful contributions continue to make me more and more amazed every single time. She's only been a co-host for 3 months. I feel like she's been with me for 3 years. It's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, really cool. And thank you to all the podcast listeners who decide they want to look a little bit beyond the podcast and check out cryptocurrencies and learn more about that stuff. So thank you very much. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.